Good morning guys. So the siding is done. Now I get to work on roughing in the inside of the house. So there's three main systems that you have to rough in this style of tiny house. That will be all the HVAC stuff, so the heating, the ventilation, and the air conditioning, then all the plumbing, and then the electrical. So those are the three main systems that you're going to be installing in a tiny house. Now, I said those three systems in a specific order. Typically, when you're roughing in just like a regular residential house, you rough it in with the HVAC first. So the heating and ventilation guys come in, they do all their duct work, then the plumbers come in, they do all their shit, then the electricians come in last and do their stuff. The reason why it's done in that order is because the HVAC stuff is the most difficult to maneuver within the house. So you want to get that stuff in first. Then the plumbing is the second most difficult stuff to maneuver in a house. Then all the electrical stuff, it is the easiest to maneuver within a house. So that's why it's always done last. So the order of action is definitely most important when you're doing like a regular residential house. And a tiny house though, because you don't have any ductwork for the most part. Like I don't know any tiny houses that do have ductwork in them. It's not necessarily, super important to do it in that order, but I'd still recommend doing it, all the HVAC stuff first, doing the plumbing before you do the electrical, I would say is definitely still very important, and then going from there. So I'm gonna split the three videos talking about these three systems into three videos just to make it a little bit easier for people to find out information about it. So in this video, I'm just gonna talk about what I'm doing for the heating and the air conditioning in this tiny house. You gotta understand that every tiny house is gonna be a little bit different. You're gonna have different utility hookups, and you're also gonna have, most people are gonna live in a different climate as well. So how you might heat and cool a tiny house here in Arizona versus one that's in, say like in New York State or something, like it's gonna be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind. I'm designing the different aspects of this tiny house specifically for living in Arizona. All right, so let's begin with talking about the heating and the air conditioning. So when you're deciding where you're gonna place either the air conditioning unit or the heating units within your house or within your tiny house, you want to place those units closest to the place where you're gonna have the most amount of energy loss. The most amount of energy loss that you're gonna experience is gonna be through the doors and through the windows. Typically where you see the heating and the air conditioning vents, say like in a bedroom, you'll typically see them underneath a window. And the reason for that is because most of the energy loss out of that room is gonna be through the window. So most of the energy loss in this tiny house is it's gonna be through the door. And the simple reason for that is because when you open the door, you're going to be losing either some of the heat in the house when it's cold out, or you're gonna be losing some of the cool in the house when it's very hot out. So when you open that door, this is typically where most of the energy loss is gonna be. So you typically wanna place your heater or your air conditioner close to this door because this is where you're going to experience the most amount of energy loss. A small little example is a lot of you have walked into department stores. So say you're walking into like a Target or a Walmart and you walk through the automatic doors and say it's really hot outside and you walk into this department store. What is like the first thing that you feel when you walk into that department store? Is you feel over top of you there's like an air conditioner blowing right on top of you. They'll place either like an air conditioner or a heating vent right above those doors because that's where they're gonna experience the most amount of energy loss. So it makes the whole system a lot more efficient. If they minimize the amount of energy loss coming in through that door, then they have to heat and cool like the main structure a lot less. Sorry for the shitty lighting, but right above the door is where we're gonna mount the air conditioner. So the type of unit that we're getting, it has like the blower unit right up here, and then you have the refrigerant lines running outside to the compressor unit, I guess you'd call it. But since this is where we're gonna get the most amount of heat gain from the house is right in this area, we're gonna mount the air conditioner right above the door. Now the air conditioner actually has a heat mode on it as well, but I did want a secondary source of heat in the house. Something that I really like are these radiant heaters that just mount on the wall. And the heater itself is only 400 watts, so it's not a huge amount of heat. Like the 400 watts is only designed to heat a space up to 120 square feet, and this house is approximately about 200 square feet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave space to mount a second radiant heater on the wall, just in case one doesn't do it. But I will have space on the wall if I want to mount another one. So that's gonna be the entirety of the heating and the air conditioning in this house. So we're gonna have 2 radiant heaters here by the door, where we're gonna experience the most amount of heat loss in the winter time. And the air conditioner is gonna be mounted above the door, where we're gonna experience the most amount of cooling loss or cool temperature in the house during the summertime. So the refrigerant lines that have to run out to the compressor unit, I'll run them through the wall and then down in the utility box. Then I'll probably mount that compressor somewhere on the ground close to the tiny house. I'll probably just pour a little small concrete pad and just set it on top of there and bolt it down to it. And that is really the heating and the air conditioning system in this tiny house. Since the space is so small and it's essentially all one big room with the exception for the bathroom, like there's just not, you really don't have to make it that complex. So there are different ways to heat and cool your tiny house. One other thing that I forgot to mention is that we'll probably have a ceiling fan in the main room as well. So that'll just keep things a little bit cooler when we have the windows open and just keep that kind of fresh airflow going on in the house. But yeah, with just taking those basic principles, it's really not that complex for heating and cooling a tiny house, just because it is such a small space. A lot of people typically go with some type of gas heater. I wanted to keep things all electric, so I think the combination of the radiant heaters as well as the AC unit that also has a heat mode, I think we'll do all right in this tiny house with that. The great thing about electric heat is that it's very easy to add more. So if for some reason the amount of heat that we had in this tiny house wasn't sufficient, even though I'm like 95 to 99% sure it will be enough, you can always add in a little bit of electric heat pretty easy. So, and I know Macy Miller always talks about, she always talks about how it's really easy to heat a house, but where most people don't, I guess, put enough forethought in is how are they gonna cool their house. Even if you live in a pretty moderate climate, having an air conditioner might be something that is important to you. When we park our tiny house on our property, we're also going to be positioning our house in a way so that we get the most amount of winter sun in the house and reduce the amount of solar gain that we're going to be getting in the summer. And that's just by orienting this main side of the house to the south and having the shoulder ends of the house facing east and west. It can make up to a 20 Fahrenheit degree temperature difference on the inside of the house just by how you have the house oriented towards the sun. So also keep that in mind, as well as having shade trees around the house and having either some type of porch cover to minimize the amount of solar gain, especially in the summertime. So if you have any questions about heating or air conditioning a tiny house, definitely leave them in the box below. And tomorrow's video is going to be talking about plumbing in a tiny house. All right, awesome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon. Peace.